and welcome back to my channel. I'm Heloise Greeff, one of eToro's most successful popular investors. In part 2 of this 3-part series, we'll be looking at my portfolio construction and hopefully give you some ideas for going into this recession. If you like the content of my channel, please remember to subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about a super important topic, and that's how to think about investing during a market downturn or a recession. Now, in order to really try and maximize your returns when you're not that fussed about the volatility, because as I said, I have a long horizon until retirement, so I'm not that worried about the intermediate volatility that there will be. And so I've been experimenting with different asset allocations. For me, I have a fairly actively managed portfolio. I do this full time. For example, before the pandemic, I had a 95/5 asset allocation. I had about 90% in stocks, about 5% cash. I like to hold a little bit of cash if I see any opportunities, and then 5% in crypto. Now, of course, that economic environment was very different to where we are now. Before the pandemic, we were in a pure growth economic environment. So everything was growing, and the objective was to maximize our growth along with the economy. Now we're in a downward cycle, so that focus has slightly changed. It's difficult to grow when everything around you is either stagnating or contracting. So during downward market cycles, the pure focus of a long-term portfolio like mine is on capital preservation. This means that the absolute focus is on reducing any losses to make sure that the capital that we have attained in the portfolio is ready to take advantage of that recovery once it starts. And in a position like mine, having a double-digit drawdown is not that worrisome, because over the last 5 years that I've had my eToro portfolio, despite this double-digit drawdown, I still have made more than 100% profits. I've still more than doubled the money that I've originally put into the portfolio. And that's the absolute power of long-term investing. That is the seatbelt that holds you in tight during these rampant volatilities, because you know that ultimately the roller coaster ride is taking you upward, and you're not that worried about this intermediary drawdowns. So finally, let's look at my current portfolio asset allocation. Just after the pandemic, my portfolio went from a 95/5 to probably, at some point, I had about 10% of crypto during the peak of the crypto bull run. We're currently at a 70/25/5. So I have 70% allocated to stocks, roughly. I have 25% in cash because I want to be ready for that recovery. And then I have my 5% in crypto. Now you might wonder how I went from having 5% in cash to 25%. I did not do a lot of selling in my portfolio. In July this year, I nearly doubled my portfolio size by adding all of my savings that I had available. And that gave me a really healthy buffer to start taking advantage of this market recovery as it unfolds. So of course, if we dive a little bit deeper, even further into this asset allocation, each allocation will have a sub-allocation. This is the example of my portfolio in November 2022. So my 70% of global stocks is currently distributed according to sectors in the following allocation. Let's talk a little bit about this. Why does it look so differently from the benchmark in which is the S&P 500? Perhaps if I explain to you a little bit my thought process, that can help you start to think about how you want to do your sector allocation. So first up, let's look at basic materials. I have a much bigger allocation than the S&P 500. Why is that? Well, I just mentioned that I foresee an L-shaped recovery. In L-shaped recoveries, we will be left extended in this painful period for a little bit longer. And how that then works out means initially we'll have this cost of living crisis, which means people will drastically reduce spending, and we're already seeing some of that. They'll also delay any repairs to their homes or any sort of other work on their homes. People won't move as much because they're sort of waiting to see what happens in the economy while interest rates rise. However, because we have an L-shaped recovery, it means we'll be suspended a little bit longer in this state. And so certain repairs to people's homes perhaps will become inevitable. There might be a leak that they can no longer avoid. It'll almost become an emergency. And so in that scenario, spending will go to basic materials because people have to do those repairs. And that's because I foresee an L-shaped recovery. In the second case, I am much less exposed to cyclical consumer goods than the S&P 500. Now, cyclical consumer goods typically tend to do well in high inflation periods. So why have I decided to keep my contribution to less than the S&P 500? Well, as I also mentioned, there is widespread agreement amongst analysts that inflation has already peaked, which means that asset allocation has already passed. Maybe 6 months ago, when inflation was still going up, that would have been a good market proposition, and my portfolio was positioned like that 6 months ago. But now that inflation has already peaked, I want to prepare my portfolio for what's going to happen in the future rather than what's already happened. And so since inflation has already peaked and cyclical consumer goods are a strong play during increasing inflation, it doesn't make sense to overexpose myself to that sector in my portfolio anymore. So that is the wrap up for my lowdown on how to invest during a market downturn. I hope by giving you a good insight into how I think about allocating my portfolio, you can take away some tips and tricks about how to think about constructing your portfolio. Now that you know how to think about asset allocation, join us next time in part 3 to talk about what your action plan can be for the upcoming recovery. If you like my content, please subscribe to my channel. Until next time, bye now!